Good morning. Cheers, and thanks for joining us for Coffee and Vinyl. Today I have Scott. He's our guest today. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning.
Cheers. Good
to be here.
It is. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And so let's go ahead and say hey to Mike. Hey, Mike. Cheers, Mike. Thanks for stopping by. Mike's the first one. We're doing a contest for the month of October for Coffee and Vinyl earning RecordKrate bonus points. And so the first person that chimes in, who is Mike today, he earns 100 RecordKrate bonus points. And at the end of the month, whoever has the highest points is going to get a package, a RecordKrate bonus point gift package. So there we go. Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Myra. Cheers. Thanks for joining us. Scott, let's jump into it. Oh, there's Kurt. Good morning, Kurt. Cheers. Yeah. Kurt, thank you so much for stopping by. He came over to Wake Forest yesterday and we hung out for a little while. Thanks. Yeah. Scott, you live the life of adventure. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's not very adventurous. But it is interesting, especially in years like this. Long story short, I'm involved with a group of 3 or 4 people, and together we make up the company and the distribution and manufacture of a brand of turntables that have been around for a long time, and it's known as Crosley. I've been active with it since the early 2000s, kind of when it got started, and it's a family business. It's actually 2 family businesses. We have a kind of a distribution wing, and then we have a manufacturing and sourcing wing. And so it's a lot of fun. I've seen a lot since the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah, as we all have. Yeah, absolutely. And so Scott came with us today. He's going to show us some cool records. And hey, good morning. Her name is T. Good morning, T. Cheers. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah. And so Scott brought some incredibly cool records to share with us. So whenever you're ready, Scott.
All I need to know is the order, because I thought this last night, and I haven't been asked to share a lot in terms of like my own personal vinyl collection.
Mm-hmm.
But there are 2 albums that I've owned on 4 different formats. And I graduated from high school in 1987. And so when I was a senior, my right before spring break of my senior year, U2 Joshua Tree came out. Immediately rushed out on street day and got it on cassette. And I didn't get a CD player until 4 or 5 years later, but it was the first CD that I bought. And when I got into vinyl, it was immediately like, the anchor of the collection. And I think I've downloaded it at least twice in different formats. So there are only, believe it or not, 2 albums that fall into that category for me. And, I think of a lot of guys around, 50, early 50s. They see, anything you've owned on cassette, vinyl, CD, and you've downloaded, you probably it's probably helped shape your life. I think that there are 2 other albums that I know fall into that category, but I don't know if I ever downloaded them or not. And it's Yaz Upstairs at Eric's.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's the songs that I was listening to when I met my wife. So it's, that's the connection. And I think if I take away that digital download, Talking Heads, Little Creatures is probably also there. So those are the 3. It's not like I had to. I'm not a huge crate digger, going for the most esoteric stuff out there. But it's like anything. I know it when I hear it and I like it. I keep it. So
there you go. Yeah.
What about you? What's your favorite?
My favorite, oh my gosh, depends on which day it is, and if it's the morning or afternoon. Hey, good morning, Brick House. Thanks for stopping by, and good morning also to Glenn, Swamp Picker. Hey, Glenn, keep eyes on that hurricane and let us know. Glenn's right in the path of the hurricane, so Oh yeah, and then T came on. I think I said hi to T. Yeah, yeah. Great selections, says Kurt. I'm all over the place. I because so many things come in, and I'm like, well, what is this? I got to listen to it so I can, and I just it's just so much stuff. I mean, yesterday I spent an hour showing almost 100 Duran records I have, and it's just all over the place. It depends on the day and the morning or the afternoon, but I gravitate toward a lot of Pink Floyd and Duran. So there you go. It's always neat discovering things. And like Duster, has anybody discovered Duster yet? Oh my gosh, they are so good. And so just stuff all over the place. Oh, take care. Glenn's off to work. Yeah. So yeah. So for me, which is great because I'm glad I can discover music almost every day.
Yeah. What when you look at your shop, what percentage of vinyl that you sell is used vinyl?
Oh, a good percentage, probably 90 or 95.
Yeah, that's high, but it's always up there. And
absolutely.
Have you ever looked at the vinyl, sales graphs and know that there's absolutely no reliable way of, well, there's not even a reliable way of tracking new vinyl at this point. But nobody really knows how big this market is based on, everybody's corner store moving anywhere between 50 and 95% used vinyl.
Absolutely. The predictable, unpredictable record market.
Right. And, the used vinyl market, I still think that it probably was a saving grace, especially with, a lot of the distribution challenges that the stores had.
Mm-hmm.
Well, still have, but, the used vinyl market, I would much rather go in and buy used vinyl, 3 or 4 copies, than get a repressed album. It's probably 5 to 1 for me in terms of buying. I've had better luck than most in the dollar bin, but the used vinyl market in that $10 to $15 range is it's such a bargain.
Singers. Yeah. Hey, good morning, Laura. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, that is so true. Steve, I did my first auction. Oh yeah, she did YouTube auction. She did. She's talking to Steve. Yeah. So there we go. This is for you, Scott.
Hey, you know what? Here's a story about our Record Store Day sponsorship, and Michael Kurtz, and one of the founders of Record Store Day. We were working, the company back in 2006, 2007, we were kind of a retro company, and we were making retro phones, retro radios, trying anything that had a nostalgia bent to it. And, vinyl naturally fell into that category. And there was a factory that we worked with that, could make a record player when not many people were making, record players, not many at all. And what happened was when we started getting calls from record stores, and this is 2005, 2006 timeframe. And one of our stores in early 2007 is like, have you heard about Record Store Day? I'm like, what's Record Store Day? And it was an idea born, that year. 2008, we got a call, and it was Michael, and he said, hey, we're looking for a sponsor. And at the time, we had a lot of data that it suggested that this was the tip of like something big. With what we'd seen up to that point was, supporting this vinyl, the format basically resurging. It wasn't, we're like Nostradamus or anything. There wasn't there wasn't, a lot of magic in this, but we had some things sell at rates way above forecasted and demand. And when Michael called, he said, I'm looking for a sponsor, and we agreed on it. And I say this to this day, it's probably one of the best uses of our resources that we've ever had. It's mutually beneficial. There's been a lot of product development about it. You look at something kind of goofy and fun, like the 3-inch record players.
Mm-hmm.
And, that would have never happened had Record Store Day not, come about. That was I like to joke with Michael that I was sitting in a tiny office with the one light bulb above my head, and in the midst of the Great Recession. And he made that phone call, and it, at the time, you never know when that phone call comes through, what it's going to come to. But I think about it a lot because it helped, the record stores that we work with, and the people in the coalitions, whether it's Sims or Doors or Ames or any of them, they're the most opinionated customers we have. And they help shape kind of our move, I guess, to the middle end of the market, away from a lot of the ceramic cartridges and things like that are typically associated with, starter turntables and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Record Store Day is a great organization. I mean,
it is wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud to live in the same city Record Store Day was created. And, I remember going to the record store, and there was Mike back there, and, Carrie lives a few blocks from me, and I miss seeing her during her and her partner, Randy. I miss seeing them during the pandemic. And, of course, Mike moved away a long time ago. But anyway, that's a different story. Yeah.
Right.
Let's see some records, Scott. Let's see some records. We're all dying to see some of your cool records.
All right. Let me go into I'll go into another one here, and it's also my I'm going to tie the business into this, but everybody has their favorite Beatles album, and mine is Rubber Soul. I think, first of all, I was not a huge Beatles fan until a certain age, and the Beatles became more important to me when I saw Paul McCartney in concert in 1993, and it's one of those moments like, I know every song, I just didn't know I liked him this much, and then it becomes the soundtrack of your life because you follow it so much. And we've done licensing deals with the Beatles where we talk about, we've done a jukebox, we've done all these vinyl accessories, and working with them to this day is still kind of like, this might be the coolest thing I do. And I wish I would have become a fan earlier. I didn't appreciate them when I was in high school and college, but right when I got out, I started listening, and I'm like, you know what, this is good stuff, and it's good stuff across many generations. But I don't know why I've gravitated toward. And by the way, this is the U.S. version of Rubber Soul. I don't know why I've gravitated so much toward this album in particular, but to me, it's like midpoint Beatles. It's not too experimental. It still has a lot of the 1965 sound. It still has, some. To me, it's kind of a pure album. I love Sgt. Pepper's. I love Abbey Road, but Rubber Soul is what I'd listen to if you give me the choice. So,
what's your favorite song on Rubber Soul, Scott?
I think in my life, that is probably for me. That's like the one that it's still kind of, it's got that emotional connection. Yeah.
Would that be the first RSD3 single on that record?
Well, if we could convince the fine folks at Sony that it's a doable deal. I would love to do a 3-inch release on vinyl. I know everybody associated with the project would, on either Beatles or McCartney. It's just these things take time, and we'll try to get something like that put together.
Do you have an RSD3 you could show?
You know what? I actually thought about bringing one, and I don't have one in my office right now. But
It's
I
okay.
can. I don't.
Part two.
Thinking out loud here. No, I don't. I should have brought one, but that's a. You know, that's a project kind of like working with the Beatles that you sit back and you're like, you know what, we made something fun here. The long story short on that is that Michael Kurtz, again from Record Store Day, went to Japan in his ambassador capacity and toured Toyo Kasei, which is the oldest Japanese pressing plant. It's the one that never shut down. Family-owned business, well regarded as like the Japanese quality standard for pressing vinyl. He was getting the tour of the plant, and they have a display case of a lot of the vinyl and formats and colored vinyl that they've done. And my phone started lighting up at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was obviously there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's text messages and pictures and everything else. Like, you wouldn't believe what I just saw. So he gets home and he sends me this little 3-inch Bandai record player. And the Bandai record player was launched in Japan early 2000s. It had terrible releases with it. It was a toy. I mean, it was ceramic cartridge and it was aimed at kids, and Bandai is a toy company. But what happened over there was they couldn't sell them. It didn't do well. But Jack White was over on tour with the White Stripes. And I don't know how somebody got one of the record players in front of him, but he ended up buying all of the production, a couple of thousand pieces, and having them press some of the original Third Man or original White Stripes releases. And they only sold those through their tour. Okay, you couldn't go to there were no Third Man stores. So if you went to a White Stripes concert with your T-shirt, you could get a little record player with 4 releases. And evidently they had a really hard time selling them because it was like a $200 item, and who goes to a concert and spends $200 on a record player? So the format died out, but the format died out before vinyl even revived. Yeah, there you go. And what happened was we did some work with Third Man and knew about it. And then Michael discovered who pressed the discs. And we started developing that player probably about a year and a half. It took us about 18 months behind the scenes to get it out. And it's been a lot of fun. I mean, we've done, I think we're up to about 35 or 40 releases now. We've done some great stuff from a lot of Third Man's got about 8 of those because they're big supporters of the project. But the Beastie Boys and Post Malone and Sun Records and Beck, it's been there's a couple other on the way. People get a little bit concerned. They're like, I didn't see a 3-inch title on the list. And this is a really bad year for the supply chain to commit to getting something on the list. So what we've done is we're going to have a couple more releases this year, but we just, with everything being the way it is in the world, we can't commit to a certain date. There we go. It's Carl Perkins release on
Jerry Lee Lewis.
I'm sorry, Jerry Lee Lewis. Yeah. We did the 4-pack. Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins. We did "Cry, Cry, Cry" by Roy Orbison, by Johnny Cash, and we did Roy Orbison release.
Yeah.
And I think the Johnny Cash release was just crazy. We didn't sell it as a 4-pack. You could buy them individually, but people just gravitated toward it. It sold incredibly well in stores and online.
Yeah, and so you took that idea. Michael knocked it off you. Michael Kurtz, hey, go check this out. And then and long story short, this is the end result of Okay, right. Okay, of this, and that's what it looks like, folks. RSD3 Mini, and there you go, a little slideshow.
Yeah, and that here's what that is obviously that's a Technics 1200, shrunk down to about 1/5 scale, but that has that unit. We made it a serious turntable. It's hard to say that it's a serious turntable because it's fits in the palm of your hand. It has an Audio-Technica 3600 moving magnet cartridge, tracks at about 3.5 grams. It has pitch control, belt driven. It pound for pound, it's a pretty serious turntable, and it made it not a toy, but still a novelty.
Yeah.
And that the first year, it took just over a year, and we sold 100,000 records, and that's a good number. It's not a great number. We were hoping for a little bit more, but getting these releases done is, it's a cooperation of the label and Record Store Day and us and our distribution arm through Deer Park, and it takes a lot. But there's 2 more coming, and it's going to help with holiday sales. I think if we're well over 10,000 players sold. Somewhere between 10 and 20,000 players sold, which is really it's a big number for a format that no one knew existed. And it's like a lot of things. No one really needs 3-inch vinyl, but it's fun. I could say this: that my turntable at home, I have my normal turntable, and then I have a 3-inch turntable next to it. And when people come over, they don't even notice the regular turntable. Yeah, it's like, hey, what's this? Does it work?
And
Everybody thinks it's a Bluetooth. They think it's a Bluetooth speaker. Yeah.
I have so much fun with mine. I mean, when I first got it, I had it connected to my hi-fi, and it's really cool. And then Jack White sent me one of RSD3, the Eco, whatever it's called. He sent me the black and yellow one, which was really cool, and I got all the records from that.
Right.
Which I have right here. This is my my Third Man record set, so I'm really happy with that. And then to find people online who are getting a little small mixer, and they make a little slip mat, and then they're doing that. It's just amazing to see that. But yeah, there you go. They need to bring back the close and play. Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, Ron.
Yeah, I know what the close and play is. You know what? It's funny. There are so many great novelty turntables from the 60s and 70s. We actually would go we went to a lot of flea markets early on. We went to, there's a big European flea market that happens twice a year in Rosmalen, Holland. And this is a show that it's hard to explain, but it's very passionate collectors. It's mostly music, but it's things like jukeboxes and vinyl and anything from the 50s, anything retro. And we started going there and picking up 1 or 2 Philips players, taking a lot of pictures. There was a lot of things that were sold by Philips in the early 70s, late 60s in Europe that just had incredible design.
Oh yeah, and the form is just amazing.
And 2 or 3 of those became our products,
Mm-hmm.
and there was one we did called the Collegiate Turntable that was, marketed in, Europe probably for 3 or 4 years in the early 70s. That it's fun to see how it's retro just because we're mimicking a design from that period, but it's a very cool way to reinvent it, I guess. Put Bluetooth in it and make it 12 volt, and instead of weighing 40 pounds, it'll weigh 15.
Absolutely. Yeah. Philips did some beautiful designs, and it's cool to see that. And then also the fact that you brought in all these beautiful colors, a lot of 50s colors. I mean, this is a perfect example. I love this color. I was attracted more to the color than I was the speaker. Then I was like, oh, it's a speaker.
Yeah, the mini speaker, it sold pretty well. It's one of those products where people you could buy them for $12-15, and you have to take it home and play with it. And if you can stereo pair it, it actually it surprises people to the upside. Let's put it that way.
It does, yeah.
The other thing I could say about like the lower end of that market, of our market, is that, for a lot of indie stores out there, yourself or anything, I think the initial reaction was that any record player that's made today under, call it, $89, you're going to end up with a ceramic cartridge. You're going to end up with 5-6 grams of tracking at least. And that really got a bad name in the indie store market because people didn't want to see, people ruining vinyl or carving up vinyl. And I think what the bigger picture is there's so many people, and when I say so many, I'm talking about millions. Okay, I'm not talking about thousands. I'm talking about millions of people that have bought those and moved up or rediscovered vinyl, or have friends that buy them vinyl because they don't have their record player. And I think it's been a big part of kind of fueling the overall demand. It's not what I would own as a record player, but record player snobbery is not my cup of tea. I have a different turntable now than I had when I was 18. Like a lot of people, you move up.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's like it's kind of like the guy who makes fun of Justin Bieber and Britney Spears, and I don't listen to the same music now as I did when I was 12, 13 years old, but thank God those kids are lining up in stores.
Yeah, and there's the table we use here at the Raleigh shop. It's the
C6.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a perfect example of, we have moving up the scale. And by the way, that turntable sells all day long for $150 or that about. And the nice thing about vinyl advancing and sales growing is that you get the scale where you can have production where that was a $300 record player 10 years ago. So it's true.
Yeah,
I've got another one here to bring up. It's probably my favorite album of the last 5 years. There you go. The Revivalist.
Yeah.
Not only is it a beautiful pressing, I mean, I just love the color. This translucent blue, perfect. These guys came and performed live in front of the Record Store Day convention a couple of years ago. And, here we are in a little hotel room, breakout function room. And they're doing an acoustic set in front of 100 people. And they tell the story about how they, got started playing record shops in and around New Orleans. And I love the music. When this came out, it was just it got some airplay on alternative radio, but it's probably my favorite album of the last 5 years. Thanks, Stephen. And then I think I need to put this in the top 5 as well.
Is Kurt still here? Let's see which one you have. Very cool.
I don't know an album that crosses so many moods in one. Morrissey is one big he's swinging from side to side all the time.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
He's, I think most people would say he's perhaps bipolar or something, but it's just, it captures an era. And I feel sometimes as I get older that I was really lucky to grow up in the 80s. It was a innocent time. It was a, fun time, not without its own set of issues, but it was, I think I'm old enough now that I'm starting to feel bad for the music my kids listen to.
That is really cool. Now, I would be the person that would vote to have a Smiths RSD3 before the Beatles, but that's just me.
Yeah, we did long before we did those 3-inch players. We did our first collaboration with Record Store Day in terms of a product. You may remember it was the Charlie Brown record player.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember and talk about something that is like lightning in a bottle. RSD normally wants to. They normally like to limit the demand for products or make it a limited edition, so it's a big deal if you own it. And I think the original idea was to do 4,000 or 5,000 of those, and that 4,000 or 5,000 sold out in a matter of days. It wasn't even a week, and there was such a clamor for them. And the secondary market, we had these turntables that were originally supposed to sell for $89 or $99 that were, $200 on eBay. Mm-hmm. And we went back and said, we've got to let's do one more run. And I think we ended up doing close to 10,000 pieces of that. And it was so well received that we did some others. We did a Mickey Mouse record player. But everybody wanted, have you ever seen the memes where the Smiths lyrics from the from the Peanuts characters?
Yeah.
Everybody wanted us to do the Peanuts characters with the Smiths lyrics, but believe it or not, the Peanuts people weren't having it. So they weren't. They don't look fondly upon it. I think even bringing it up might not have been a great idea. So
Charles would have loved it.
Yeah. And you know what? It was. If you look at the number of times that Charlie Brown references his vinyl or listening to records or relaxing with records, I mean, we had like 25 or 30 stills to choose from that had some sort of vinyl reference. And, that piece, that artwork where, he's carrying his vinyl over to the player is, it's iconic. Everybody recognizes it, and it's not because it was on our record player. It's just, Charlie Brown listening to records.
Exactly, yeah. And then there was the Star Wars.
Yeah, that was Star Wars. We did Ramones.
Oh yeah.
We did a limited edition Ramones. We did Star Wars. It's almost like I told Michael one time that, like, we can't do many more of these because we're running out of icons, and we could do maybe pull off a Beatles turntable if we would get the permission to do that. But it's funny how it all came together because Record Store Day lends a lot of credibility. I think even record companies that historically have kind of been like big business, or at least seemingly leaning big business, I think everybody there has a soft spot and an appreciation for what goes on at indies, and how, you take those 1,200 stores, collectively it's a big business for a lot of people. And I think that the people who sit there and license their images, they can only do so many backpacks and t-shirts. But when they get a record player, something tangible in front of them that they know is going to be a kind of a hardcore collectible, it's a good thing.
Yeah. Have you had anybody to purchase a cruiser and then they do their own embellishment and send you an image and say, "This is what I did"? Have you had that happen, Scott?
We actually had what's the store you go to? Paint Me Pottery? Is that where you go and there's like a craft store where you can go and you make your pottery.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, there's a lot of people who, they're the Dogfish Turntable, perfect example. We did that one as well. That was a collaboration with Dogfish Brewery, and there's been 3 or 4. I think we've made 3 or 4 of those at least, 3 or 4 different designs.
Right.
What people were doing was they were decorating their own record players, kind of like putting just anything on them, making them collages, sparklies. So we actually got this close to making just a basic black turntable, kind of have matte finish on it, that you could decorate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't move forward with it because we didn't supply any of the things that you'd have to supply to decorate it. It's up to individual taste at that point. And, some people wanted sparklies and some people wanted, glitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, people customize them all the time. And it's kind of like the guy with the Apple laptop with 41 stickers on top of it. That's what they're doing.
Exactly. Well, cool. That's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, any teasers for any special cruisers that are themed coming up that you can share with us?
Yeah, I will say this. I think we're at the point now where when we do these future turntables, and there are some coming. I can't name them here. But they're going to be higher end to the degree that they're going to have a moving magnet cartridge. They're going to have pitch control. They're going to track at 5 grams, 3.5 grams for a lot of them. A fully supported platter, not necessarily a turntable, but you can do an all-in-one like a record player. There are some. Let's put it this way: I think we may be on the dawn of our biggest one next year, but time will tell. It would surprise me if we didn't surpass what we did with some of the early Record Store Day stuff. And the difference, you know what? That's a good idea right there. Make a turntable with Eddie Van Halen's iconic striped guitar color scheme. I haven't had that's the best idea I've seen all week. So let Steven know that we'll try our best, and if that comes to fruition, he'll get the first one. The one some of them that we're working on are in that Star Wars, that iconic imagery. There's not a lot in that orbit, so you have to be careful what you pick and choose from. But when we do one, we'll definitely. I'm hopeful. Let's put it that way.
All right. Very cool. Yeah. Show us some more records.
All right. I think I'll probably get to my last genre here, but you go to grunge, and in 1991, I graduated from the University of Kansas, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was Nirvana had just released Nevermind, and Pearl Jam had come onto the scene. And every year, the University of Kansas books a band to play what's known as the Hill. And the Hill is just, kind of where you go for concerts when you're there, free outdoor concerts. And they booked a band called Pearl Jam in 1991. Mm-hmm. And Pearl Jam was playing, at the time, venues that were probably 1,000 people, backwater bars and whatnot when they booked them. And so I got to see Pearl Jam live in May of '91. And it was, it's like seeing it's like seeing Beatles on Ed Sullivan. It was, to me, one of the things that, I've appreciated the grunge movement more in the last few years. I think it kind of burned white hot for so long that people got tired of it. But if you look at what it displaced, if you look at what it knocked out of the market, I think it served its purpose. It kind of took the hair bands off the map for a while. And it was unlike anything else. And I haven't seen anything like it since in terms of music, where people, something comes along that's so much different that people gravitate towards so quickly. I mean, it reached mainstream status, within a few months of it, being heard. So I'm proud of my generation, I think, in terms of that.
Wow. Very cool. Yeah, that is very cool. Not everybody can say they saw Pearl Jam in '91. That's for sure.
Yeah. And it was a great time. I mean, you think about you just you never know when you're going to be walking into that. Hey, I was there. University of Kansas. I say this. It may have been '92 that it happened. I graduated in '91, but I remember going back. So I think it was actually the '92 show, but still it was amazing. And to have them there, normally you might get 1,000, 2,000 people. I think there were probably 12,000 people on the hill. Wow. It's a big outdoor concert. Rock Chalk Jayhawk. It was a day. Yes, it was.
Oh my stars! That's awesome.
Yeah.
Lawrence.
If you Google it, it'll come up with it. I think it was '92. But absolutely amazing. To a lot of college students at the time. I wasn't on the 5-year plan, but it was really close. And I had a lot of friends on the 5-year plan, and so I was going back frequently, and I didn't live very far away at the time, so it was good to see them. But
that is good.
I think about my own record collection. I think about what I've pieced together, and so much of it is formed around, the 1982 to 1995 timeframe. I don't know what it is about that period, say when you're 15 to 25, but the connection, I think it helps you feel young or something, because if you go to my satellite radio, I'm big into the '80s. I'm big into anything that happened before about 1995, and then I just kind of lost track for a while.
Oh, that's cool. This great memories, and we can connect those memories, and it's awesome. But you said your children. What are your children listening to?
Well, they're into vinyl. They have to be. It's a requirement. And I have a daughter who's a big, she's always gone to summer camp, big singer-songwriter types. I think the things that I connect with her on are James Taylor and the stuff that's, the classic singer-songwriters. But she's into Billie Eilish. She's 20 years old. Now the Bottleneck in Lawrence, Kansas. Yes, I went to the Bottleneck many times, right on Vermont Street. Yeah, that's great. The Bottleneck in Lawrence, Kansas. Yeah, '82 is her favorite year. I think there are some people out there. I always have to catch myself, because I'm at a certain age where I don't want to sound like the old man in the room. And if I listen to music that they're listening to, and my initial reaction is that's a bunch of crap, I say, maybe it's just me. And but when they connect with music that I like, or if I go out and I see young people, hanging out, listening to the '80s songs, I love that. And I, I think that I was lucky to grow up in the era that I did. It was before the boy band. It was before the record companies kind of discovered like pop culture music.
Yeah.
So
Wow. But that's so true. But if you look at 2020, there's so many wonderful bands that are out there today and they're releasing records, and it's just amazing. It's just a little harder to keep up with and get familiarized with because, hey, thank God for the internet, but our radio is really different these days. Yeah.
And I want to talk about that for a second because, you take things like Spotify or Pandora, and I don't necessarily view them as the enemy. I think I've had this happen to me, and I know that I've talked to a lot of other people about it, where let's say I'll turn on Pearl Jam radio, and all of a sudden I'm finding things from Soundgarden that I never listened to, or I'm finding you're connecting the dots. They do a nice job curating things that are similar enough that you're probably going to like them. And I've discovered a lot of bands that way. And the Soundgarden's a perfect example that I just didn't listen to that much, or I knew about it, but I wasn't into it. That I'm like, man, I wish I would have, listened more of these guys at the time. And I think being able to do that, not a lot of people, you have time in your car, you have time when you're sitting at the desk working, but you don't really appreciate how they connect those levels of connection that they have where they suggest the bands. I think it's ultimately helped music stores and helped people find more music that they like.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And streaming audio today is a lot different than it was 10 years ago with Pandora. And
Right.
Pandora was great 10 years ago. They're a lot different now, but the introduction of Pandora to me was just incredible.
Yeah. And I think the yeah, you know what? I wish the CDs were more of a thing for me. And here's the CD format. I think is going to be an interesting format in the next few years. And the death of the CD with it leaving cars. I don't. It's always going to be in the background. It's whether or not it one day has a resurgence, like similar to vinyl. My CD collection never grew beyond the low hundreds. That was maybe 100, 150, 200 pieces max. But, I hope that I think we're going to choose between digital and analog in the future. And, that's going to be a digital format. And I don't know if we will be considering CDs as like a physical format. It's physical. You can hold it in your hand, but if you think about the 100 other ways you can use it, whether it's, burning it or, downloading it to your computer, it's going to be interesting to see what market share role it has in the next 2 to 3 years. It's rare. I'll say this. We didn't make a CD player for 20 years. Michael and Carrie from Record Store Day showed up at the Consumer Electronics Show back in 2016, 2017 and says, we need a high quality CD player. That's all we need because we can't find them. And, people were buying DVD players to use as CD players.
Exactly.
And so we came out with a CD player, and it's basically, it's kind of like the Bose Wave radio. But it's one of those, the Bose Wave radio is like the standard, and the CD player has done really well. It's almost like it's a retro item now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Stephen loves CDs. Stephen realized CDs are much less expensive. And so Stephen is a devoted, dedicated CD person, and he probably has more CDs than I have vinyl for sale at all in stores. Uh-oh, I'm about to be crucified, but I'm bringing back 8-tracks only because my dad always played it and I miss him so much. Yeah, Laura, I've seen you talk about that before, and that's really cool. Her father, she's going through her father's 8-tracks, and Laura's learning how to restore them and, properly resplice them. Yeah, so do we see a track player on the horizon?
Do you know how many times I've been asked to make an 8-track device? I mean, it's in the hundreds. There's two problems. Is that one, you're not going to see anyone remanufacturing 8-track cassettes. It's just not going to happen. So that you have to rely purely on the used market. The other problem is, as you know, you say she's restoring them, they degrade, and the foam, you have to rebuild the foam inside and the splice, and there's a hardcore collector crew out there, but the problem is it's finite. It's a few thousand. It's not a few 100,000. Yeah. And all of the tooling, like the original 8-track tooling, has been lost. It doesn't exist out there. You can't go to a factory and it's sitting somewhere in the corner. So it's the likelihood of there being an 8-track brought back to the market, new of any type, is remote at best.
Yeah, absolutely. And and so I'm really happy for you, Laura. I sell 8-tracks. If you like Kiss, you take this Kiss 8-track and you put it on the shelf beside your Kiss records, and it's really novel. But at the same time, NC Records, he plays 8-tracks, he buys them, he brings them home, he resplices them and replaces the foam, and he's good to go. And the people who have classic cars, that's all they want. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I know we're running close on time, Scott. Can you talk a little bit about the C6, the C8, and the C10, please?
Yeah, and I think the backstory is, I don't want to be a commercial for anything, but when we started dealing with indie record stores, 2008, 2009, we had ceramic cartridge, we had Urban Outfitters type of players. And there was a group out of some of the larger record stores, the Department of Record Stores group, where we took a bunch of designs in front of, and they're like, instead of being the Urban Outfitters type where they would say, make it in, velvet, these guys were, let me tell you the 18 ways your tone arm sucks, and they were all very clear, as only a record store owner could do. So we started developing what was a mid-range at the time, and it's still a mid-range turntable. Anytime you can spend $150 or less on a turntable and get a decent quality piece, it's a mid-range product. I mean, as you know, there's a lot of people that spend 3 times that on a cartridge. You end up, what happened was there was this big installed base of people who had already bought our suitcase record players in college when they were young. They just had $60, $70, $80 to spend, and then you can take them to the next level. And we developed it. We looked at designs from Audio-Technica, Project, Music Hall, all sorts of manufacturers, a couple rings up in terms of price point and features. And we came up with turntables, the most expensive of which is $189, $199. And they're kind of like no one would ever have to make you never have to, it's a no excuses turntable for almost anyone who's not a pure audiophile. and you can get the most out of your music. You can enjoy your records and not damage them. You can and you don't have to spend. You don't have to go to the vintage piece that there's a finite number of as well. I would love it if everybody could have a Technics 1200 that they picked up for $150, but that doesn't exist anymore. And when we got started with this, there were so many record stores who only sold vintage gear, and I'd go to them and I'd say, you know what, that's great, but time's running out on that. You'll still have garage sales, you'll still have the one-offs, but you can't rely on that forever. Mm-hmm. And it's been, for us, it's been a great move. It's helped the brand. I think it's helped us in the indie community. And, it's nice. You can spend $150 and get the player that you don't have to make excuses for. And I don't know if it's going to go down from there, but had we done this 10 years ago, they would have been $250 or $300, because the scale of manufacturing now in terms of the sizes and the numbers is just so much higher. That you're making them thousands at a time, not hundreds at a time.
Yeah. I have the C6. I tell you, folks, when this pandemic's over with, I'm getting the white C6 just because it's white.
It's I think if you look at the brands that are out there, take Project, for example. I love that brand. I think they do an unbelievable job. It's basically a handmade piece in the Czech Republic. If you put a C6 for $149 next to a Project, Element for $299 or whatever they're at right now, you start paying attention, you can see where that $150 goes. You can see, the seams on the veneer, don't line up perfectly. You can see, the, the quality of or the thickness of the dust cover, the hinges on the dust cover. You can save a couple of bucks by going a little bit down, but where you don't sacrifice is you don't sacrifice the bearing, you don't sacrifice the motor, and you don't sacrifice the cartridge. And you spend about the same amount of money, but the finished product is a little bit rougher, but the things that really matter, and those are the three things that really matter, are pretty much the same.
The bearing, the motor, and what was the third one? Bearing, motor.
Bearing, the bearing of the turntable, the cartridge, and the motor, and most of those products have the like a synchronous motor, and so there's no pitch control. Look at that. You know what? That's a great point, because I have a vintage Marantz receiver that I love, and I understand nostalgia business. And if I could find a Technics 1200, for less than a few grand that's restored, I would jump on it. But yeah, vintage turntables are like vintage cars. You're either into cars or you're not, and you love all cars. So that's the analogy, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. So that was very cool, Chris. But those are being used now. You don't find certain records pre-owned anymore because people are keeping them. They don't want to get rid of them. They want to keep them. And so, it's true, the well's drying up on many things. And so, very cool. Yeah. You'll always have that garage sale find. There's lots of things tucked in basements all over the country, but the days of buying that vintage piece, for a bargain and a song, and stores have caught on to it as well. Right.
The markup on them is so high.
as much as I like the later Technics, the plastic gears, they're failing, they're cracking, they're breaking, and they're just getting old, folks. And yeah, and so there you go. So your flag, not your flagship, but your most expensive, your highest end C6. How does that differ than some of your other tables? I mean, your C10, excuse me, the C10.
The C10 was actually a collaboration that we did with Project. We went over to Vienna and met with them and went to the Czech Republic and toured the factory. And I think a lot of people know this, but it's not like it's a big secret anymore. And especially since it happened 4 or 5 years ago, is that they manufactured those C10s and C20s for us under license. And what we did with these is that we took kind of our look, which is the wood grain, it's an MDF platter that's got a veneer on it. These turntables really, it kind of launched us into that combined with the feedback we were getting from the indie stores, launched us into a different genre. And we said, how do we bridge the gap between the $89, how do we bridge the gap between the $89 suitcase record player and the $400 Project? And you take what's best out of the Project, but you can also, people don't need a furniture level finish quality on their turntable. It's okay if the seams don't line up exactly on the veneer. It's okay if it's not hand rubbed for 3 different coats of mineral spirits. The Project piece, I'll say this, especially with the OM5 and the OM10 cartridges. I mean, it's going to be tough to ever make a better player than that. It's such a pure player. I love what they do in terms of having completely manual setups. I agree completely that anything you do with a tone arm that you attach to it, or a feature that you give to it, is going to ultimately impact sound quality to a certain degree that it's not going to help it. We could probably sit here and debate forever whether or not how much it hurts it, but it doesn't help it. So like my own turntable I have in the other room is a C20, which was the OM10 cartridge, beautiful like Zebrano wood, and it was a $400 piece, $450 piece, but it helped. We dealt with enough mainstream people that at the time Project didn't have if you were into vinyl, you knew about them, but you didn't know about them if you weren't into vinyl. So I think it benefited both of us.
Very cool. Yeah. Wonderful things we're talking about, Scott. I appreciate it much. And hey, big surprise, that's for sure, because I didn't realize we were getting into all this cool stuff. Well, I invited you, which is awesome. But we're just over an hour. Before we leave, do you have 2 more records you can show us?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Laura was saying that she restored cars with her father, and the 8-tracks were in the car, so that's part of it, which is cool.
Yeah. Part of our business is jukeboxes, and the crossover between people who are into classic cars and jukeboxes is so strong. To the degree that we went out to the Barrett Jackson auction a few years ago in Scottsdale, where they auction up all the high-end cars, and you always see it on one of the cable shows. I mean, people just go crazy for anything electromechanical like a jukebox. I've mentioned it before, but I didn't show it. And it's Yaz upstairs at Eric's. The reason I bring this up is I think this was the cassette that I had in my car in my 1986 Oldsmobile custom. My Oldsmobile Custom Cruiser. It was a station wagon. Inherited from the family.
Yeah.
But I put a cassette player in it that I bought at Kmart, and Yaz upstairs at Eric's was on the rotation, probably to the degree that I I ruined 2 copies of it.
And you got the MoFi pressing of that.
I do, yeah. And you know what? That's probably another format that I've owned. You know, the MoFi pressing of that is actually it. I don't have a great ear, but anytime I pay this amount for a record, I come home and I tell myself that I can hear the difference. And I think an album that was panned originally when it came out, you know, this was the follow-up, obviously, to Joshua Tree, and how long awaited. You know, they had some covers on here, they had some live, but I go back and listen to this now, and I don't hear what the critics heard then, and I just think it's something that it stands on its own now. So
it is.
I remember waiting for it to come out, and I remember this was. It was about 1990 or so, 91 that this came out. And I remember, you know, just the critical, you know, picking up Billboard magazine and, you know, somebody's got to go after you too, after all the success on Joshua Tree. Yeah.
That was during the time the record stores would sell them at midnight. And that was awesome. Oh, very cool. I went to a lot of those. I'm sure a lot of people did also. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, cool, Scott. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Anything you'd like to leave everybody with? And I hope you'll come back and do it again, and we can continue all this coolness and stuff like that.
It was a good time. I enjoyed catching up, and it's, I'll end on this, and I'll say this, is that the pandemic's changed a lot for a lot of people. But the thing that I've seen and I've noticed is that the small businesses on the corner, the guys who opened their shops because they own 20,000 records that they wanted to sell part of, the amount of scrambling and creativity and just appreciation that their own customers have shown for them, it's been meaningful, and it's been widespread. And I think, if anything, the communal nature of business, you know, getting together, listening to music, you guys, indie stores have always been a collection of humanity that you can't quite find anywhere else. And that's missed. That's missed big time. And I you know, appreciate the indie segment more than I do anything else, because it's more diverse, it's more fun, the best ideas come from it, it's organic, it's not manufactured, it's great.
Yeah. Mara asked, do you know how the movie industry has a film vault to preserve all the movies? Is there anything like that for albums? I know there's lots of reel-to-reel tapes being stored, Myra, and it's easier to store celluloid than it is the magnetic. There's so many problems with it after age and separation, and yeah, it's just like one of the best jazz records by many people, Mills Davis kind of blue. It's gone. The tape is gone. It's so deteriorated. It's just gone. And so,
wow.
And so if anything happens now, it's a copy of a copy of a copy, you know, that happens. And that's the reason we have a lot of digital files that are used to create new vinyl. But once it becomes vinyl, it's analog, folks. Yeah.
That was a much bigger deal. That you probably read a lot of behind the scenes stuff about that Universal fire, but you know, they didn't fully acknowledge, front at least, how much was lost. You know, it was a big event, a bad event.
Yeah, 11 years later, we learn of it. Then I start emailing everybody I know. Was this in there? Was this in there? And thank God that Nirvana Bleach cassette tape was not in there. It was actually stored somewhere else. But a lot of labels, they have their own vaults where they're storing things, which is good, especially with the fire that happened. So there we go. Yeah. Wow. Scott, had a blast. Cheers, Scott.
Yeah. It's
with us.
cheers. Have a great day at the Record Crate, and I hope to be there in person as soon as things lighten up a little bit.
That'll be fun. Come on down. We'll look through some Barry Manilow and Kitty Wells. We'll make it happen.
All right. Thanks a
All right,
lot. I appreciate it. All right. Take care.